A group of lawmakers is calling on Secretary of State Antony Blinken to do more to address an increasing number of Havana Syndrome cases among U.S. officers. In a letter obtained by CBS News, they call the situation a, quote, significant, unmitigated threat to our national security. Suspected cases of Havana Syndrome have been reported in recent weeks in several countries. That includes Colombia, where the Secretary of State is expected to visit next week. Havana Syndrome is a mysterious neurological condition. CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis joins me now. Olivia, great to have you. So Havana Syndrome is still so much of a mystery. What are the primary theories about what causes it, and what are the main concerns?
Sure, Lana. So the closest thing that we have to a scientific explanation for what this is came from a 2020 study that concluded it was the result of directed pulsed radio frequency energy. The unofficial hypothesis circulating among U.S. officials is that these incidents are the result of attempted intelligence collection by a foreign government whose operatives are using directed energy technologies to target maybe electronic devices, and that mechanism, when pointed at a human being, can have those damaging neurological effects that you mentioned. As these cases have proliferated, officials are really now starting to question whether what started as attempted intelligence collection has now really turned into willful attacks that are intended to cause harm, using, again, that technology that's just doubling as a weapon. In fact, in the eyes of many of the victims that I've spoken to, and in the eyes of lawmakers who have access to classified information, there is no doubt in their minds that these are now attacks that are designed to be deniable, that are being carried out by a hostile adversary, with the lead suspect being Russia, and others haven't been ruled out, but lead suspect is Russia. And to your question as to what the concerns about these phenomena are, I mean, they really are how little is known about them. It's not known how long these symptoms last. It's not known whether they can be cured, whether they lead to other debilitating conditions like Parkinson's disease. So these are all, questions that hundreds of American officers are really struggling with right now.
And it's called Havana Syndrome because the first known cases took place in Cuba. I mentioned Colombia. Tell us, Olivia, where else cases have been reported and how many total cases have been suspected since 2016?
Sure. So the trend is pretty troubling. Overall, there have been more than 200 cases reported worldwide since 2016, and those have come from every populated continent. But scores of them have been reported in this year alone. And you mentioned some of the countries. They've arisen in Austria, in Germany, in Vietnam, Uzbekistan, other places, including here suspected on U.S. soil. Just this week, as you mentioned, there have been new cases emerging in Bogota and Colombia, which is of concern because they're reported ahead of that expected visit by the Secretary of State to that country. And that makes it the third known incident where these reports have come with what looks like alarming proximity to the travel of senior administration officials overseas. In August, the vice president had to delay a trip to Hanoi, Vietnam, when a U.S. official there reported symptoms. In September, the CIA director, a senior aide to him, was sickened during an undisclosed trip to Delhi, India. And all of these cases, it's worth mentioning, are still under investigation. They're not confirmed instances of Havana Syndrome, but the people that I've spoken to about them say that they certainly appear to have been designed to send a clear message to these officials: we can get to your staff and we can get to you too.
Yeah, these are actually attacks on U.S. personnel abroad. In their letter, lawmakers actually said that they're concerned that the State Department isn't giving Havana Syndrome enough attention. What actions are they hoping to see from Secretary Blinken and the department?
Sure. So, yes, this was a meaningful bipartisan group led by Senator Jeanne Shaheen, who are really calling on the Secretary of State to take immediate action to what they have called a crisis and, as you said, an unmitigated national security threat with these multiplying cases. They're asking him to urgently do two things. One, to appoint a senior level official who reports directly to him, to appoint a sort of a successor for a role that was vacated close to a month ago by a senior official who victims complained was somewhat inattentive to their needs. So to have that person named and in the role overseeing this internal task force that the State Department has looking at this issue. Two, it called on him to prioritize legislation that the president signed into law last week that would boost financial support for victims of these incidents who have confirmed brain injuries. And overall, it called for what it termed heightened engagement from the secretary, who's been comparatively slow on this front. He's only met with victims virtually once. He hasn't really demonstrated a personal commitment to the urgency of an issue that affects the workforce like this. And it's in contrast to somebody like the CIA director, who's met multiple times in person with victims, has visited the medical facilities where they're getting treatment. So really, they're just essentially saying the State Department and the secretary need to up their game on this issue, starting with these two topics.
That's very interesting, especially given, as you mentioned last week, President Biden's action on this front. So what has been the response by State Department officials?
Yeah, actually, this letter was raised during the State Department's afternoon briefing, and it does look like that first issue of the senior official overseeing the State Department's internal task force is seeing some movement. The State Department spokesperson said today that the department would be in a position to make an announcement of a successor in the coming days. So it does appear to be some news and some movement on that front.
Well, I know you and I are both fascinated by this and that you'll stay on the story. Olivia, thank you.
Lana, thank you.